We are here together this evening to share a space of deep silence, and in this type of meetings, this specific type of meetings, I could in the very same way remain silent throughout for 2 hours, say no word, convey nothing, and it would be essentially the same. I will not do that. Because to share such a naked silence without any safety belt, is not always easy. Then there are words. But what is important to understand is that whatever we are going to verbally share tonight is just so we can deepen this silent understanding, this depth of awareness and presence. On a daily basis, we usually, mostly for, at least partly for good reasons, or at least reasonable reasons, we usually don't know this type of intense presence and awareness, being fully here with our mind and body and heart and spirit, to be fully awake. From head to toe. Because to be able to be fully awake so intensely, so fully, this is like learning an extraordinary art. But it is the art of life, so it is the highest art. So here it's all about tasting a state in which we raise gradually the volume of our presence from 1 or 2 or 3 to 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, until we get to a point in which we are so present that we are presence itself. We are so conscious that we are consciousness itself. A point in which we hold with our consciousness the entire space. We grow so big in our presence and consciousness that there is no limit to this consciousness. So whatever I say in this evening should be looked at exactly like this, an encouragement. It's like with every sentence. Because this is not a lecture. I'm not talking about travel in space. I'm talking about you. About your consciousness, your presence. So, we can let this happen tonight together. Reach such a wakefulness, not a tense wakefulness, not alertness, but wakefulness. So awake that we can easily notice every thought passing. Every emotion, everything becomes so clear in this wakefulness. And you realize that your presence is bigger than anything. So today my so-called talk, my silent talk, my wordless talk is about something we, I think, are all familiar with, about pleasure and pain. Because basically, in the simplest way, life can be divided into these two. And our life runs around these two opposites, perhaps opposites. We experience them as opposites often. We may intellectually say, no, they are not opposites. Pain is part of life. But in our experience, they are surely opposites, right? Because we feel that we like pleasure and that we don't so much like pain. And how do we know that? Because when there is pleasure, we go for it. We respond with passion, with a thirst being quenched. And when we are met with pain, we respond with aversion, with trying to push it away, with some resistance. And you know what's so funny is that, let's say statistically, I'm joking, it's not really statistically, but just for the sake of saying statistically, we tend, you know, when our spirituality tends to happen, when there is pain, right? It's like when we feel uncomfortable, when we begin to suffer, then we begin to question, to ask, why do I suffer? What is there something beyond my suffering? How can I be free? Usually when there are good times, when there is pleasure, we don't ask, why do I enjoy so much? What is there beyond this enjoyment? How can I be free from my pleasure? Right? We usually don't say, we just go for it. We just enjoy, because life seems so unexpectedly generous that we don't want to ruin the party. You see? We make sure we squeeze every drop of it until it tends to go away, to slip through our fingers, sometimes replaced just with a sort of dullness, sometimes with pain, with the disappointing part of life. Now, this is not so bad that our spirituality is encouraged by distress, by sadness, by problems, because in a way this is why it is here. You see? In a way, we all know that without pain, without sorrow, we would have never inquired. We would have never developed. We are mostly driven by it, because it gives us the feeling that something is incomplete in our understanding. It gives us a feeling that we don't understand life. And it's very extraordinary when someone inquires in pleasure, you see? When everything is good. Who knows, perhaps if there was only pleasure, everything was perfect all the time, absolutely no problems. Would we, without suffering, still look for spirituality, look for happiness beyond life and death? Look for reality. If your answer is yes, by the way, you are very lucky. Because this means that you have found a certain drive in you that is very precious. Gautama the Buddha, they say, he started with being distressed by the empty pleasures in his palace. Then he started realizing also that there was suffering all around, sickness, death, poverty. But even the pleasure of his palace, all these beautiful women dancing and so on, even that he looked at with a sense that this is meaningless. He saw through the pleasure, was looking for reality. And he saw that this pleasure would turn into pain eventually, you see. The beautiful woman that looks very young, very fresh, then would get old, get ill, die. Then attaching to it, well, would not make much sense. But if you are able to look into the pleasures of life, and to inquire, to question, to look for meaning, for sense, then this means that you have matured greatly. Meaning that you are not using spirituality anymore just to find relief from pain. You see? Because if I only do it while there is pain, if this is my only encouragement, then it means that my spirituality, my practice is still because I just don't like pain. I'm trying to find something to soothe my suffering, but I'm still craving a constant state of pleasure, you see? And it is very difficult for us. It's very natural. It's in our instincts to agree, to let go of the dream that one day it will be only pleasure. How do we know that? All our thoughts throughout the day, all our emotions refuse to accept that. Try to make sure that everything will go well, that we are in full control, that we ensure our pleasure is uninterrupted. I hope you understand pleasure. When I say pleasure, I don't mean just, I don't know, dancing, sex and wine. I'm talking about all the good stuff in life, all the good stuff, all the beauty of our life, the things we appreciate for good reasons, the beauty of our children. The smiles of our children, the rare moments of sun. Here we are trained to really appreciate that. Where I came from, Israel, we used to crave just a little less sun. It was all the time there. Could it be less sunny sometimes? So here it's the opposite. So the moment in which we walk in a beautiful nature, in a park, feeling the sun on our skin, the taste of ice cream, the soothing sweetness of ice cream, the moments in which we are hugging someone we love, or we succeed at work. These are everything. Pleasure is everywhere. Is all those moments in which life suddenly tells us, hey, you know what? I'm good. It's good to live. All this hope that you were cultivating, it was true. It's nice. But then our being clings to it, you see? And it's natural, please understand, it's natural. We are in human bodies, physical bodies. This is a dimension where a physical pain is something that is extremely real. And when there is physical suffering, it is unbelievable. And when there is physical pleasure, it is also unbelievable. Something, because this dimension is its sensations are so real. You see? So this is the good part of this material dimension and the bad part. And it's all in one, the same, because the sensations are amazing and terrible. we can know tremendous discomfort, and we can know a wonderful comfort. And so how can we know what it means to not want discomfort. But the greatest key of spirituality is when you don't attach anymore to the comfort. Not that you reject it. You know, some reject it. There is some cult, some sect in India. They are called Aghori Baba. Do you know? I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They are the sadhus, Aghori sadhus. They eat from human skulls. Really. They eat from their food, from human skulls. They eat from the dirt. They live in cemeteries because, and they never mind. I think you got it. They are very extreme. So they want to experience that Shiva, that God is also in the most terrible conditions, in the dirt, in death, and so on and so on. So they really took it to the extreme. We don't need to go that far. If we can do it from the inside, we don't need to eat our soup from human skulls. Because if you learn the lesson of life here, how to experience pleasure without attachment, and how to agree to pain without rejection, then you got it, you see? Because then there is no more stopping of the life force. We stop the life force in two conditions. One is when things are good. Then we try to stop life. You see, it's like wanting to put the push the pause button. You see, freeze. Okay, now stay. Don't move. Don't move. Don't move forever. And we know this. You know, you find someone, a romantic partner. You hug, you feel this warmth, feeling your body, the sensation of finally being at home, relaxing, not needing to look anymore for anything, being loved. Sounds good, right? I can sell you that. And then this very warm hug goes away. Either because we get used to it, or the partner, the relationship becomes dull, or simply because it's over. And then whole body remembers that once it felt at home, you see? And it doesn't want to let go. And so much of the pain that we know in life is because we don't want to let go of pleasure. We don't want to let life flow, you see? To let the river of life just flow. So this is when we stop breathing. And it sounds very strange, right? That we because it doesn't make sense. Often we describe these moments as the first time in which we felt that we were breathing, that we were alive. But no, because beneath it there is an unconscious tension. We don't want to let it go. And unfortunately, our experience in life is that it would go. And this is like something we really, really don't like, you see? And then we ask our partner, so is it forever? Then our partner says, yes, forever. We say, forever. That's it, safety. No interruption anymore. Beneath the stream, we know, not forever. That's why, by the way, our greatest shocks are in childhood. You see? Because in childhood, we still believe the forever. So that is why there we have our biggest traumas. It's like when our forever got broken. So we stop breathing when things are great. Even in spiritual experience, something opens up, wonderful, beautiful, but you know already that it is going to fade. And then we stop breathing. And on the other hand, we stop breathing when we begin to feel pain. We freeze. We don't want to feel. We don't want to feel that. We want to push it away. Which means that basically we don't breathe much. Right? Because if it's in both cases, it's the resistance is here because we don't let life just flow, be as it is. Again, you can't enjoy pain. We're not crazy. Nobody can enjoy pain. It's not like, oh, wow, it's so wonderful to feel this migraine again and not to be able to feel the nausea that I'm going to throw up and that I can't see sunlight and so on and so on. You can't enjoy pain. But you can deeply accept it. And you can accept it as an experience, as a valid experience that is part of a river, without using defense mechanisms, like, the pain will go away, or this is all for the best, or it has a higher reason. We never ask for a higher reason for our pleasure, right? But what is the purpose of this? It's like, why? Why would I need to experience now this tremendous love? We never question. We embrace it. Can we accept pain in the same way? Like no explanations, no pain relief. Yeah. There is the known statement, "This too shall pass." Now, can we say it about positive things? You see, while they happen, like hugging, loving, and say without bitterness. Don't turn it into like a cynicism, like, this too shall pass. I don't care about anything. It's not about that. No, enjoy it fully. Fully. Experience the pleasure with all your body, with all your being. But remember, while this is happening, these too shall pass. Inquire, what is there beyond the pleasure? Because you see, pleasure is like a very delicate sunlight, just a flicker of light coming from the sun of bliss. You see? Pleasure is just like a reminder of a greater beauty that is not the beauty that has an opposite. It's not like beautiful nature and ugly garbage can. Wonderful ice cream and, I don't know, terrible food or something. Romantic connection, soulmates, and abandonment. It's not. There is beauty beyond those beauties. And there is happiness beyond happiness. The happiness beyond happiness is what we can call bliss. Because you see, when the stream of experience is allowed, it is just flowing like a river, without interruption. This is where there is no self. The self is like this non-breathing part. There is no problem with any pleasure. That's why I don't advocate this Aghori sadhus thing, because if you get the lesson, you don't need to do special stuff. Life is your master anyway. If you don't put this non-breathing, if you don't stop this or that, there is no self. It is just a river without a me that selects. And then, when there is no selection, when you become the river, you become one with it, then something very interesting happens. You are suddenly filled with joy. That has nothing to do with pleasure and pain. You see? It's the very joy of life, and you don't care what is happening anymore. It's beneath the stream. Always. And things go wrong, and you experience pain. At the same time, you are joyful. Because life itself is joy, you see? It's a river, a vibrating energy that sometimes slaps you in the face, sometimes hugs you, sometimes gives you a kiss, sometimes gives you, I don't know, a bite. Sometimes it is, and it's just energy, you see? It's just energy changing form. Pleasure and the pain is another form of pleasure. And the pleasure is another form of pain. It's just that it's the same entity. It just takes form and then transforms, and I will tell you something interesting that taken from the myth of reincarnation. I'm saying the myth of reincarnation because it's not important if there is reincarnation or not. It's perhaps it is real, perhaps it is not. What is important is to be free now. But just to, as a metaphor, as a story, it is very beautiful. Because you know what happens in reincarnation? Basically, we can have a very terrible lifetime. Very terrible. Like with torture and sadness and illness and abandonment. Then you should ask, why do we reincarnate? It's like, why do we want to return? Anyway, if it's so terrible. You know why? Because after we die, and again, this is the myth, after we die, we forget about all the pain and remember only the pleasure. And it's a magical thing that characterizes human beings. We don't remember. It's erased from our memory, and we remember only the few drops of light that were there. Our child, our love, the nature, or good food, and then we die, and then we say, at the beginning we float in nothing, and there is such peace and quietude, but then we say, oh, but it was so wonderful there, I remember. Though the love and the feelings and the sensations, yeah, I'm okay. I must return to experience some of it again. And you know, it's not just in this huge story, it's also usually when a woman gives birth, there is pregnancy, and the birth giving, it can be terrible. Who remembers that? Usually this is like a funny story. Oh yes, it was a very terrible birth. We were like for 2 days in the hospital, and but who remembers that? What you remember is that moment, the moment in which you look at the baby and you feel the glory of life, the eruption of life's intensity, this connection. We don't remember. because we cling so strongly to these moments, you see. We can only let go if when we had these moments, we said inside ourselves, this too shall pass. Like to feel a hug strongly with all your being while remembering that this is going to fade, you see? That you are holding something that is still, it is passing. It's not yours to hold forever. And this gives it even more beauty, you see? To look at the sunset in a glorious moment where everything is perfect. And to accept with love that it is fading also. To let it go. This is the only time when you can die without having to return, you see? Because you love the beauty, you appreciate it, you don't reject it. But there is a greater beauty that you love more. It is the beauty of going beyond pleasure and pain. The beauty of freedom. So the real wisdom is let go while it is still yours. And again, this doesn't reduce the experience. Don't think that this means you will not feel. On the contrary, you will for the first time be able to feel because you will breathe, you see. To raise a wonderful child and to look at it, the child's eyes and to know, okay, this too shall pass. The child will grow, the child will die. Another child will come into being. This doesn't make this child less. This makes it more eternal, you see. then you can look at your child and the frame in which its face will be eternity. Then everything is held in eternity. The sunset, love-making, any good feeling that you will ever have. Then you will be able to have deep, deep silence also when you are in pleasure. So, you are most welcome to ask questions. Yes.
You said before that we should, for instance, experience pleasure in its fullness.
Yes.
While realizing that it will pass.
Yes.
And I've noticed that the more totality there is in this moment of fulfilling pleasure, the more the death side of it, or the empty side of it, is present while pleasure is being experienced. Can you explain about that?
I didn't understand.
Like I say that the more totality there is in the moment of experiencing pleasure, the more the presence of emptiness, like there is some other quality that doesn't allow you to get attached. Like if the totality is full, then there is a natural ending to that. You don't even need the idea of the actual two paths. If you can explain about that.
So the more totality is there in the moment of pleasure, the more there is a sense of no attachment. This is what you say. First of all, this is true about everything. When there is real totality, there can be no attachment. Because totality means that there is not enough room for self. You see? Because what happens in every experience is that we have a certain center that we can be called the experiencer. The experiencer is our trouble, not the experience, because the experience itself is just an experience but then there is a certain center. The center could never be really total. Because it always minimizes the experience for some reason. If there is a total experience, first of all, there is no time. You see? If, for example, you are here completely in this evening, if you are really here, is there a time? What is time even? You see? There is such a totality that there is no room for time and therefore also no self, basically. You see? But of course, if I sit here and I think, yeah, okay, I'm sitting, I'm thinking about these things, feeling a little silence, then after that I'm going to eat with friends, and tomorrow I will practice this in meditation and so on and so on. Then, of course, the time enters, you see. I am not fully here. Some of me is here, and some is tomorrow, and in a certain, not just tomorrow technically, tomorrow is a sense of there is a tomorrow, you see, like feeling that. So this is true in general. Whenever there is totality, there is no you. You see? The you is this part that either wants to prolong it, or to stop it, or to make it more, or to keep it forever, you know. So the whole thing, the whole art of experience is to be able to experience something in such a totality that there is no time. Now, the funny thing with pleasure is that if we always say that we like pleasure, but we never fully experience it. You see? We always experience it maybe 10%, 20%. Try once when there is a moment of glory, a moment of beauty, a moment of delight, try to experience it 90 or 100%. Like let the pleasure explode in you, expand it, make it like from one nice thing. It's like if you want it, come on, let it explode. Let it fill your entire body and being. If you let that happen, you realize that you are beyond pleasure, you see. You go to somewhere that is inside you, in your consciousness, that is that the pleasure was only pointing towards, you see. I knew a friend who got awakened, spiritually awakened in very interesting circumstances. She was dancing and she entered a deep ecstasy. She was like in a complete ecstasy and then while most people they cling to that moment, there is still not enough totality, you see. There is still me. She asks herself, so, but what is behind this ecstasy? What is experiencing this? And at that moment, the boundaries, the limitations of the experience were shattered. And so the dance was just, the ecstasy was just pointing, you see. It just was like an arrow saying, hey, look at you. Look at the consciousness that is behind this pleasure. This is so much more. I am just its little Cupid. You see? You know Cupid? Eros? Yeah? Eros is just like a tempter. It's meant to attract you towards love. So any pleasure is like this, the flicker of light of a great sun. This knowledge is basically the origin of Tantra. This is how it started, with the realization that yes, you can be completely neutral, meditative and so on, or you can just take your pleasure and use it as a springboard to consciousness. If you, of course, are mature enough to do it, because usually when we meet pleasure, we don't want so much to transcend it, you see. That's why the great yogis, they say that Tantra, sexual Tantra, for example, is meant for people who have practiced so intensely that they don't have even sexual desire. You see, isn't it? It's very funny, because they say that and if you still have sexual desire, then you will fall into it. You see? So this is too delicate. But if you have the wisdom, you start with pleasure. If you follow it through, any pleasure is like the divine calling you. Any sweetness of food is meant to connect you to the sweetness of the hidden reality. Yes.
I have a question about the circle of life and death.
The circle of life and death. Uh-huh. What about the circle of life and death?
I'll use the short version of the question. There's one concept that says that we are consciousness, and the circle of life and death happens within us.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another concept that says, or perception that says, we are both consciousness, in which the circle of life and death happens, and the circle of life and death together.
Mm-hmm.
What in your view is more accurate, or?
So you said that there are two streams, two schools, two thoughts. One says that we are, basically we are talking about the more witnessing part, right? So the part that said that we only observe, in a way. We only watch the life and death. And those who say that we are both, right? I don't know, take your pick. Which one do you want to win? No, but seriously. There is absolutely nothing that we are not. If there is something that we are not, this means that also there is something that the divine is not. Right? That, let's say, if you think, is the divine consciousness only the observer? So then what is life? What, like not the divine consciousness? Is it made of some different material? The divine consciousness reality doesn't work like a painter and a painting. That you when you create a painting, the painting is not you. It is only an expression of yourself, and then you can sell it. And then your painting is somewhere else because it was not you. It's just something that you gave. You see? Creation doesn't work like this. There is no painter and painted. The painter makes the painting from its own, you see. It is within itself. Then that which witnesses and that which is witnessed are, of course, one and the same. all these observing practices, when teachers say witness, just witness, witness, nothing happens to you, this is only for beginners, because it is important. We are too identified. If I only think I am this, of course I need to learn how to observe neutrally, how to separate consciousness, my awareness, from my life, right? And this I need to do very thoroughly. But in itself, it's ridiculous. It's just a practice. How can there be something that I am not? I am the camera that is capturing me right now. I'm looking from there and from here. I'm sitting and asking myself a question. Then I'm answering myself. Then who is the observer? And what observes? And what is observed? And this is truly the great enlightenment, you see. There is awakening. In awakening, there is a separation between consciousness or awareness and everything. There is total freedom. And in enlightenment, it's like a river that is flowing into the great ocean, you see? And then there is no more separation. It's like everything just collapses into itself.
And it sounds that in that understanding there's no liberation and nothing to be liberated from, actually.
That there is no liberation. In enlightenment, this is the most embarrassing thing in enlightenment is it's like you are progressing, you are detaching, you are reaching, and then in enlightenment you stand and you scratch your head and you ask yourself, what has happened? It's like, basically nothing has happened because there was no process, because there was no liberation, there was nothing to be free from. So then, it's like you more wake up from a dream of being in bondage and then being awakened, you see? This was your dream. You suddenly realize that even being awakened was a dream. And then you have nothing to say no to, you see, because you are everything. Yes, please.
I went into inquiry, and it was quite obvious at a certain point that nobody was there doing anything, like me. And then I thought, something.
Yeah.
Nobody else is, of course. So I can find that nothing is outside of me if I inquire into that. But still, of course, I believe that there are people and they have thoughts and feelings and everything, just like I have a perception now.
Yes, most probably.
Yes, and
Yes.
so if there's no duality, it could be only one perception. And since I have one, it would be mine. I mean, even if it's not me. But, I'm aware of something, and I guess the others are too, but how could that be, if there's no duality?
This is a very beautiful question. First of all, I'm deeply touched that you are inquiring like this, because this is very extraordinary that when we are engaged so deeply. So the question, just to repeat for the online viewers, when we realize that we inquire, and then we realize that basically there is one consciousness, right? But then obviously, and one perception, but then obviously there is also not one perception, because also when I tell you that you are myself asking a question, then you are still not myself asking the question. Otherwise, you would have already known the answer, and then wouldn't have bothered to ask, right? And then we also, as soon as I would become enlightened, then all of the world would immediately become enlightened, which could be quite convenient, right? It could save us a lot of trouble. Yes. When I was 23 and awakening started to take place, then I was sure that everyone got enlightened. I was walking on the street and I thought, oh, here's a Buddha, a Buddha, a Buddha. And I couldn't differentiate. It was obvious that everyone was sharing that because it was only one consciousness. So it cannot be that they don't experience it. Maybe they don't want to admit it. Maybe they want to fool me. But I didn't believe them. After some heartbreaking years, I came to realize that reality is a little more complex than that. The thing is that please think of reality as made of different layers. It's like a cake with different layers, and it's not just one homogeneous consciousness. And in each layer, in the deeper layers are one, and we're just when we awaken, we get in touch with the deeper layers. And the deeper layers are always here, and they are inseparable. It is shared by everyone. Everyone is in it, even when they are not aware of it. And then there are more superficial layers. And in the more superficial layers, I'm here, you are there. So in enlightenment, in an awakening, we don't. Our realization is not is not valid for all the layers of reality, but only for the deeper ones, in which are non-local and which are not relative. Because we need to understand the fact that there are here in the room something like 30 different perceptions, individual, unique, is wonderful. It's why we, as one self, split ourselves one day and to make a certain experiment, to create a meeting that is a constant tension between myself and something that is not myself, you see? This tension creates, well, very interesting times here on Earth, and probably also in some other places. It's interesting because it makes possible something remarkable. But still, all this happens only in the superficial layers of reality. So when you inquire, you break through the layer of the personal perception and find out something that is relevant to all, but is deeper than the personal perception, you see? It's like you see through something. But this something that you see through is still here. And has a good reason. Yeah, you understand. Yeah, you understand. Yes, please.
We're talking about your experience of having this awakening experience with 23, and you were walking around and you were seeing all the others who were supposedly not enlightened.
Yes.
You said if we were all enlightened, I
Yeah.
would say it was a lot of trouble. So I have two questions. What is the point of not being enlightened? And do you think that the more people awaken, is there some kind of threshold? Is there some kind of... So if a certain number of people become enlightened, is it possible for the rest of the population not to be enlightened?
I see. Interesting. So you're saying, you're basically asking two questions. One is, what is the point of not being enlightened, right? Because it seems like it's the experience of most people, yes. And surely it seems like it is, if there is a God's will or a divine will or a higher will or life will, then surely it is life's will and pleasure also to experience a lot of unenlightened minds and hearts. It doesn't seem like life says, oh, I can't bear these guys. Wake up. No. Life seems to abundantly allow a lot of ignorance and seems to be very patient. Not only that, the truth, reality is so shy that it doesn't even try it doesn't come with fireworks and screams. It doesn't even come. You come to it. It's like you knock on the door. You say, hey, could you come, please? Even then, it doesn't come. It says, well, if you ever want me to come, you need to be so silent, so still, so undemanding, so gentle. Then into this space, I will just flow and make myself visible. But if you will even try to grab me, say, hey, truth, I will immediately slip through your fingers. And it's not because truth is evil or vicious. It's because truth is so delicate that you cannot hold onto it. You see, it's too shy, it's too delicate. That is why it enters only a mind, a consciousness, a heart that do not grab it, that they'll let it be with silence and love. So, truth doesn't beg us to be seen or something like that. It is there everywhere, filling the entire space. But it is such pure love that it is also patient in an abundant way. It loves our journey too. It even loves our struggle and our ignorance. It patiently accepts all of our wars and stupid things that we do to each other and horrible things because because it is not only in enlightenment that reality knows itself. Enlightenment is just the moment, the turning point in which it becomes fully conscious of itself. But reality knows itself in every moment of human struggle and human overcoming, in which we try to bring out the best of us. Try to get in touch with the spirit in us. Learn to overcome ourselves. And I think reality is actually very interested in this meeting point between matter and spirit. In all the subtleties that this creates, in all the complications that this creates, in the conflicts this creates, and in the glory that this enables. And this is, by the way, when there is such a vision, there is finally a room for love, you see, for true love. Also, in oneself, because you look at everyone and you see the Buddhas and you see the enlightenment as the deeper reality that waits, and you see also the unenlightenment, and you embrace them both as you see the process that in cosmic timing, in cosmic time is actually only few seconds. I will do just for a joke, you know, I was once with I went to a certain, I think, Taiwanese teacher. I went with someone who was sure he got enlightened. And this guy was like all over the place. He wanted recognition, and he wanted to start teaching, and he was like talking to everyone like in a messianic exhilaration. And he sat in front of this, it was a Zen master in orientation. And he told him, I know, and I am enlightened, and there is no time. I must spread it to everywhere. And this Zen master was like listening and smiling, And then he said, good. So what I recommend is now wait 7 years. 7 years before you do anything. Let it now ripen. And this guy went crazy. 7 years? What are you talking about? I don't have time. I can't wait. And then he told him, why 7 years in cosmic time are 7 seconds? So wait 7 seconds. Now after this person heard that, he went on, and then he got completely confused, and the enlightenment was gone. Because it wasn't grounded. When there is real awakening, you don't feel this kind of megalomania. On the contrary, people need to convince you to talk. You see? You don't just go and say, hey, a new teacher came to town. No. It's just people come to you and they say, what's going on? What is happening? Can you share with us? And then they sit, and then you talk a little, and then you talk a little more. And then that happens by itself. So the second question is there a threshold after which there is a certain number of enlightened people that could, I don't know, create like a momentum, right? Well, perhaps, yes. I admit I never really think in this way, as in numbers that we need to raise a certain number. But the question is if there could be a momentum of enlightenment, and I think that there could be. But I don't think that only if enough people got enlightened, but if all those people that got enlightened would unify into one great movement. Then if there would be a gathering of forces, perhaps, because this world doesn't work only from the inside outside. It also works from the outside inside. It's the material plane, after all. It's not just like you think something and then everything changes, right? If you want to change something, you also need to change in action. So, for a momentum to be created, there needs to be a change in consciousness, but also in action. Consciousness could influence action. Action could come out of consciousness. But without action in this world, there is no like magic that suddenly, and then the whole planet is golden, glowing, and so on and so on. Any last question? Yes, please.
So if I understood it right, the second chakra is connected to earthly pleasures and things. So if I find myself chasing pleasures too much and running away from discomfort too much, should I work on my second chakra somehow?
Okay, so you're asking about the chakras.
Yeah.
About pleasure, when we are driven towards pleasure, right? So then this chasing of pleasures, whether it is it comes from the second chakra, and then to be free from that, right? We need to, in a way, to balance our second chakra and to awaken it. Yes, in chakra terms, yes. Yes, this is a complete learning of the art of experience. You see, because the second chakra, when it is childish, it is all about the joy in experience. It's like as if the joy of life is trapped in certain experiences, and you need to experience in order to take out the joy. You see, it's like milking. You see, it's like you take the essence out of sex, and then the romance, and the raising children, and creativity, and nature, and food, and all this. You just take it out. But in a mature second chakra, you realize that experiences are just echoes. The experiences don't have the joy of life in them. It's like a projection. The joy is projected on the experience. Then you try to grab it, and then the experience is gone, and then you say, hey, what happened to my joy? And we don't understand that the experience is just like a mirage, you see? It is there to give us a reflection of our own consciousness. And this is not easy. It's to realize that all the, I don't know, a beautiful man, a beautiful woman, wonderful food, an amazing adventure in nature, all these are empty. There's nothing in them. It's like projected beauty that gives them a sense of worth. But if you chase them, you are lost. If you use them to be reminded, of something that is inside you, that is your quality, that is what you are and what life already is, then suddenly you look back at the world that you filled with so much meaning, you see? Suddenly you look at it and say, oh, yeah, cute, nice, okay. But nothing like the real thing. There is in the yogic tradition a physical metaphor for it. And I'm saying physical metaphor because it's real. It's physical, but it is also some kind of a divine metaphor. The genius of life, there is something that is called Amrita. Amrita is considered the nectar of life. In the yogic tradition, it is known to be produced from the upper palate downward. And when one becomes liberated, this Amrita is simply dripping, drop by drop, and your whole mouth becomes filled with unbelievable sweetness. And it's like the essence of sweetness. And it's so strange. Where does it come from? And don't ask me, I don't know where it comes from. But it's like, it's almost like a symbol, a telling of life. Hey, the sweetness of life is in you. It is self-produced. And with Amrita, you don't care anymore about sugar in your life because you realize, oh, the ice cream, the chocolate, they were all echoes, you see? They were all there just to tell you about the sweetness inside. Thank you. Good night. Thank you for this sharing.